In the grand chamber of the Vigilant Council, 12 beings of extraordinary power sat in uncomfortable silence. Their forms varied dramatically. Some were pure energy contained in crystalline vessels. Others were biological entities, so advanced they barely resembled their original forms. But today, they all shared the same expression of concern. Admiral Varix of the Kraxan Empire stood before them, his metallic scales reflecting the soft bioluminescent light that filled the chamber. His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on each council member in turn. "With all due respect," he said, his voice carrying the characteristic resonance of his species, "your continued protection of Earth is incomprehensible." High Counselor Zenith, a being of pure thought housed in an ancient mechanical frame, leaned forward. "You mistake caution for protection, Admiral. Our directive regarding Earth is not meant to shield it, but to shield the galaxy from what dwells there." The Admiral's secondary hearts quickened with irritation. The Kraxan Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, brought enlightenment to countless primitive species, and yet this single planet remained forbidden. A planet whose inhabitants still fought among themselves, who had barely mastered basic space travel. "The humans are primitive," Varix argued. "Their technology is centuries behind even our most basic capabilities. They waste resources, destroy their ecosystem, and wage pointless wars. Under Kraxan guidance, they could become so much more." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Counselor Darius, whose crystalline form pulsed with internal light, spoke next. "You speak of things you do not understand, Admiral. Earth is not what it appears to be. The humans—" She paused, her light dimming slightly. "They are not what they appear to be." But Varix had not risen to his position by accepting mysterious warnings and ancient taboos. His cybernetic implants had analyzed every scrap of data about Earth, every observation made from afar. There was nothing in his calculations that suggested Earth posed any real threat. "The Kraxan Empire formally requests permission to establish contact with Earth," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "If the Council refuses, we will proceed independently." The silence that followed was deafening. The counselors exchanged glances that carried volumes of unspoken communication. Finally, High Counselor Zenith rose, his mechanical frame towering over the Admiral. "We cannot stop you, Admiral Varix," Zenith said, his voice carrying a weight of ages. "But know this, the barrier between Earth and the rest of the galaxy exists for a reason. What you perceive as primitive is merely a surface, a thin veil over something far older and far more dangerous than your empire could possibly comprehend." Varix felt a chill run through his biological components, but he maintained his resolve. Then perhaps it's time someone lifted that veil. As he turned to leave the chamber, Counselor Darius called out, "Remember, Admiral, we did not create the directive to avoid Earth. We discovered it, written in the ruins of civilizations far older than our own. Civilizations that no longer exist precisely because they chose to ignore those warnings." Back aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, Varix stood at the command center, reviewing the final preparations for their mission to Earth. His second-in-command, Commander Thex, approached with the latest reports. "The fleet is ready, Admiral," Thex reported, her exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. 20 warships, all equipped with our latest quantum shielding and reality anchoring technology. Whatever surprises Earth might hold, we're prepared." Varix nodded, his cybernetic eye scanning the holographic display of their target solar system. "The Council's warnings are nothing but the fearful whispers of an organization that has grown too comfortable with its power. Earth is a prize waiting to be claimed, and the Kraxan Empire will be the one to claim it." As the Eternal Dawn and its fleet prepared to jump to Earth's solar system, none of them noticed the subtle changes in their quantum readings, the barely perceptible distortions in their reality-anchoring fields. The first signs were already there, but in their confidence, they failed to recognize them. The conquest of Earth was about to begin, and with it, the unveiling of a truth that the galaxy's oldest civilizations had learned to fear. A truth that would change everything the Kraxan Empire thought they knew about their place in the universe, and about the true nature of the beings they called human. Eternal dawn emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its massive form casting long shadows across the void. Admiral Varric stood at the command center, watching as the rest of his fleet materialized around them, their quantum drives humming with residual energy. "Begin long-range scans," he ordered, his cybernetic eye focusing on the distant blue planet. "I want complete analysis of their defensive capabilities." Commander Thex worked at her station, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Initial readings are peculiar, Admiral. Their orbital defenses are primitive scattered satellites, a handful of space stations. But there's something else." She frowned, her antennae twitching in confusion. "The quantum signatures around the planet are unlike anything in our database." "Interference from their primitive technology, nothing more," Varric dismissed. "Deploy the scout drones. Let's see how they react to our presence." The drones, sleek and nearly invisible to Earth's detection systems, streaked toward the planet. As they entered the atmosphere, their sensors began transmitting data back to the fleet. Cities sprawled across continents, vehicles moved in organized chaos, and billions of humans went about their daily lives, completely unaware of the armada hovering at the edge of their solar system. Lieutenant Krell, the fleet's chief science officer, approached with a concerned expression. "Admiral, I'm detecting anomalies in the drone feeds, the spatial coordinates. They don't align properly." "Explain," Varric demanded, his secondary hearts beating faster. "It's as if," Krell paused, struggling to find the words. "It's as if space itself is different around Earth. Our measurements show a city in one location, but when we try to triangulate its position, it's somewhere else entirely. And the differences are growing." Before Varric could respond, alarms blared across the command center. The drones were malfunctioning, their signals becoming erratic. On the main display, the video feeds showed impossible things: streets that curved in ways that defied geometry, buildings that seemed to breathe, and shadows that moved against the light. "Pull them back," Varric ordered, but it was too late. One by one, the drones went dark, their signals vanishing as if they had never existed. Commander Thex's voice was tense. "Admiral, we're detecting movement from the planet's surface, multiple objects ascending rapidly through the atmosphere." The objects appeared on their screens, dozens of them, then hundreds. They weren't missiles or ships or any recognizable form of weapon. They were geometric shapes that shouldn't exist, forms that hurt to look at directly, leaving afterimages that burned in the mind rather than the eye. "Impossible," Lieutenant Krell whispered. "Those objects, they're moving through dimensions we can't even measure." Varric gripped his command console. "Deploy defensive screens, prepare main weapons. Whatever tricks these humans are playing, they cannot stand against the full might of a Kraxan battle fleet." The fleet's weapons powered up, reality-warping cannons designed to tear apart the fabric of space itself. But as they prepared to fire, something changed. The quantum shielding around their ships began to fluctuate, the carefully maintained fields dissolving like mist in the morning sun. And then they heard it, a sound that shouldn't have been possible in the vacuum of space. A deep, resonating hum that vibrated through their ships, through their bodies, through their very consciousness. It carried with it a message, not in words but in pure understanding. "You were warned." The geometric shapes from Earth had reached them now, surrounding the fleet in a complex pattern that seemed to fold in on itself endlessly. Where they passed, space itself seemed to ripple and tear, revealing glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible beyond. "Admiral," Commander Thex called out, her voice shaking. "The reality anchors are failing. We're losing containment of our quantum fields." Varric watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to change. The metal of their ships started to flow like liquid, colors appearing that had no names in any language. Crew members reported seeing impossible things through the viewports, their ships existing in multiple states simultaneously, timelines splitting and merging, cause and effect becoming meaningless concepts. "Full retreat," he ordered, his cybernetic systems struggling to process what his organic eyes were seeing. "Get us out of this system." But retreat was no longer possible. The hyperspace engines, when activated, simply caused more reality distortions. It was as if the laws of physics themselves had been rewritten around them, turning their advanced technology into useless sculptures of metal and energy. Through it all, that humming continued, growing stronger, more insistent. And with it came understanding. Earth wasn't defenseless. It had never been defenseless. What they had mistaken for primitive technology was merely the surface of something far deeper, far older, and far more terrible than anything the Kraxan Empire had ever encountered. The last thing Admiral Varric saw before his flagship systems completely failed was a simple text message, displayed in perfect Kraxan script across every screen. Earth is not a planet, it is a boundary, and you have just learned why some boundaries should never be crossed. In the aftermath of the failed invasion, the remains of the Kraxan fleet drifted in space, their once mighty ships now twisted into impossible shapes. Only the Eternal Dawn remained somewhat intact, though it bore little resemblance to its original form. Its hull had become semi-transparent, revealing layers of reality stacked upon each other like pages in an infinite book. Admiral Varric stood in what was left of his command center, his cybernetic components struggling to process the altered reality around him. The room itself seemed to pulse with an inner life, walls breathing in patterns that matched the distant hum that still permeated everything. Commander Thex and Lieutenant Krell worked frantically at their stations, trying to maintain some semblance of control over their failing systems. "Admiral," Krell called out, his voice distorted as if coming from multiple timelines at once. "I'm detecting a signal. It's coming from everywhere." The main display flickered to life, showing not an image but a window into what appeared to be an ancient library. The walls were lined with texts written in languages that predated the formation of galaxies. Standing among the shelves was a figure that seemed both human and not, a woman whose form shifted between different species with each movement. "I am Curator Nexus," she said, her voice carrying the weight of eons. "You have questions. I have been authorized to provide answers." Varric stepped forward, his mechanical eye attempting to focus on the ever-changing figure. "What are you? What is Earth really?" "Earth," Nexus began, pulling a book from a shelf that hadn't existed a moment before, "is a containment system. A prison, a sanctuary, and a gateway, all at once. What you perceive as human civilization is merely the surface layer of something far more complex." The library around her shifted, the walls becoming transparent to reveal vast mechanisms that operated on principles beyond comprehension. Billions of years ago, when the universe was young, there existed beings of pure thought and unlimited potential. They could reshape reality at will, bend the laws of physics like you might bend a blade of grass. But their power threatened the very stability of existence. Images appeared in the air around them, creatures of pure energy and impossible geometry, their forms too alien for even the advanced minds of the Kraxan to comprehend fully. These beings were not evil, but their mere existence caused reality to unravel around them. A solution was needed. "Earth," Commander Thex whispered, understanding dawning in her compound eyes. "Yes," Nexus confirmed. "Earth was created as a special pocket of reality, a place where these beings could exist without destroying everything around them. They chose to take physical form, to live within limitations, to experience existence as part of the natural order rather than above it." "The humans," Varric said, his voice hoarse. "They're these beings." Nexus smiled, her form settling briefly into something almost human. "They are their descendants. Over millions of years, they chose to forget their true nature, to live as mortal beings, to experience life with all its limitations and possibilities. What you see as primitive technology is actually incredible restraint. They unconsciously maintain their own limitations, keep themselves bound to physical laws, all to preserve the stability of the universe." Lieutenant Krell stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. "But when we attacked..." "You disrupted the carefully maintained balance," Nexus explained. "The human consciousness began to remember, to awaken. What you experienced was just a fraction of their true potential stirring from its self-imposed slumber." The library around them began to shift again, revealing glimpses of Earth's true nature, layers upon layers of reality folded together. each human simultaneously existing as both a limited physical being and something far more vast and terrible. The Vigilant Council, Varix realized, they didn't create the warning about Earth, they discovered it from us, Nexus completed. We are the curators, those who chose to remember to maintain the balance, to ensure that humanity remains safely contained within their self-imposed limitations. We leave warnings throughout the galaxy, hints and messages, to prevent exactly what you attempted. Commander Thex's antennae twitched as she processed this information. But why allow us to survive? To learn this truth. Nexus's form shifted again, becoming something that resembled a constellation of stars arranged in humanoid shape. Because the time of isolation is ending, humanity is beginning to remember naturally, gradually. The universe must be prepared for what comes next. And what comes next? Varix asked, though part of him feared the answer. Evolution, Nexus replied simply. Humanity is awakening, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as what they truly are, guardians of reality itself. The question is not whether your empire will survive, Admiral Varix, but whether you will choose to be part of what comes next. The library began to fade, but Nexus's final words echoed through the twisted corridors of the eternal dawn. Return to your council. Tell them what you have learned. The age of separation is ending. The time of remembering begins. Return journey to cracks in space was unlike anything the crew of the Eternal Dawn had ever experienced. Their ship, now more living entity than machine, moved through space in ways that defied conventional physics. Reality rippled around them like waves on a cosmic ocean, each ripple carrying echoes of humanity's awakening consciousness. Admiral Varix stood in his quarters, watching his reflection shift between different versions of himself in the metallic surface of the wall. His cybernetic eye had stopped trying to compensate for the reality distortions, instead displaying a constant stream of error messages that scrolled across his vision. A soft chime announced Commander Thex's arrival. "Admiral," she said, her exoskeleton now shimmering with patterns that seemed to tell stories in an ancient language. "We're receiving reports from Earth. The awakening, it's spreading." The ship's main display activated automatically, showing them scenes from across the planet. In New York, a street artist's murals were coming to life, her drawings stepping off walls and dancing through the air. In Tokyo, a young programmer's code had begun to rewrite the fabric of reality itself, turning the digital into the physical and back again. In Lagos, a child's dreams were manifesting as floating gardens that defied gravity, blooming with flowers that had never existed before. "It's not just isolated incidents anymore," Lieutenant Krell reported, entering the room with a stack of data crystals that kept rearranging themselves. "The humans are beginning to remember en masse. Their civilization isn't breaking down as we expected, it's transforming." The display shifted to show more scenes. Scientists whose theories were becoming reality even as they wrote them, musicians whose songs could be seen as colors in the air, writers whose stories were creating pocket universes. Humanity wasn't just remembering their power, they were redefining what power meant. "Curator Nexus was right," Varix murmured, watching as a group of children in Brazil turned their playground into a miniature galaxy complete with living stars. "This isn't about destruction or conquest, it's about evolution." A new signal cut through their observations, a broadcast from the Vigilant Council. The 12 ancient beings who had warned them about Earth were now addressing the entire galaxy. Their message was being transmitted across every frequency, in every language, even in ways of communication that hadn't existed before. "The boundary is dissolving," High Counselor Zenith's voice resonated through the ship. "The separation between what was and what will be grows thin. We stand at the threshold of a new age." The broadcast showed images from across the galaxy, ancient ruins coming to life, long-dead stars rekindling, spatial anomalies resolving themselves into new forms of existence. Earth's awakening was affecting everything, rippling outward through space and time. But it wasn't chaos. There was a pattern to it, a purpose. The humans weren't simply unleashing their power. They were reshaping reality with intention, with care, with a deep understanding of the responsibility they held. "Look at this," Commander Thex called out, directing their attention to a new set of readings. The quantum fluctuations we detected during the invasion, they're not random. They're forming a network, connecting everything to everything else. Lieutenant Krell's scientific enthusiasm had overcome his fear entirely. It's like they're creating a new operating system for reality itself. The laws of physics aren't being broken. They're being rewritten, improved, optimized. Through the ship's viewports, they could see other alien vessels approaching Earth, not as invaders but as witnesses. Species that had hidden from each other for millennia were coming together, drawn by the fundamental changes rippling through existence. A message appeared on their screens, written in letters that seemed to exist in all languages simultaneously. Welcome to the Remembering. Varix watched as a group of humans, or what had once been simply human, appeared in Earth's orbit. They moved through space without ships or suits, their forms shifting between physical and energy states. Around them, reality curved and flexed like a living thing. They're not destroying the old order, Varix realized, his cybernetic systems finally adapting to the new patterns of existence. They're integrating it into something greater. Every species, every civilization, we're all part of whatever comes next. The eternal dawn shuddered as another wave of change swept through the galaxy. But this time, instead of fighting against it, the ship and its crew embraced the transformation. The boundary between organic and mechanical, between real and impossible, between what was and what could be, all of it was becoming something new, something that had never existed before. And through it all, Earth continued its spiral through space, no longer a prison or a hiding place, but a crucible where a new form of existence was being born. The humans, those beings who had chosen to forget their own nature for the sake of the universe, were remembering not just what they had been, but what they and everyone else could become. 1 year after humanity's awakening, the galaxy had become something that defied all previous understanding. The Great Chamber of the Vigilant Council was no longer a fixed location, but a space that existed wherever and whenever it was needed. Today, it manifested as a vast amphitheater suspended between dimensions, where representatives from across the cosmos gathered to witness the formation of a new cosmic order. Admiral Varix, his form now a harmonious blend of organic, mechanical, and energy states, stood beside Commander Thex and Lieutenant Krell. Their experiences aboard the Eternal Dawn during first contact had made them natural bridges between the old way of existence and the new. At the center of the amphitheater, a group of former humans, now known as the Awakened, prepared to address the gathered species. Among them was Dr. Elena Rossi, once a quantum physicist in Milan, now a being who could shape quantum fields with a thought. Beside her stood James Chen, a former artist whose imagination now literally reshaped reality, and Aisha Patel, whose childhood dreams of universal harmony had become the foundation for the new cosmic architecture. "We gather today not as separate species," Elena began, her voice resonating through multiple dimensions simultaneously, "but as participants in the greatest transformation our universe has ever known." The amphitheater shifted, showing images of the changes that had swept across the galaxy. Worlds once thought dead now teemed with new forms of life. Ancient enemies had found ways to merge their civilizations into something greater than either could have achieved alone. The very fabric of space-time had become a medium for art, communication, and existence itself. "The boundary we maintained for billions of years," James continued, his words painting colors in the air, "was never meant to be permanent. It was a cocoon, protecting both ourselves and the universe until the time of emergence arrived." Lieutenant Krell, who had spent the past year studying the new physics that emerged from the awakening, stepped forward to share his findings. The human consciousness didn't just remember its old power, it evolved. What we're seeing isn't the return of ancient beings, but the birth of something entirely new. Screens materialized around the amphitheater, displaying data that would have been incomprehensible a year ago, but now made perfect sense to everyone present. The universe wasn't just changing, it was becoming aware of itself, using humanity's awakening as a catalyst for its own evolution. Commander Thex, her form now able to exist in multiple states of reality at once, addressed the assembly. The Kraxan Empire came to Earth seeking conquest. What we found instead was transcendence. Our civilization, like many others, has been transformed not by force, but by possibility. The images shifted to show the new Earth, no longer a hidden sanctuary, but a nexus of creation. Cities had become living artwork, technology had merged with consciousness, and the line between possible and impossible had dissolved entirely. But amid all the transformation, daily life continued. Children still played, people still fell in love, stories were still told. The mundane and the cosmic had found a way to coexist. Aisha stepped forward, her presence bringing a sense of calm to the infinite space. "This is not an ending," she said, "but a beginning. We remember now not just what we were, but what everything can become. The universe is not a place of limits, but a canvas of infinite potential." Admiral Varix watched as representatives from thousands of species came forward to join in the establishment of the new cosmic framework. The Vigilant Council was being transformed into something greater, a collaborative body where all forms of existence could participate in shaping reality itself. "The age of separation is over," High Counselor Zenith announced, his ancient form now merged with the very essence of existence. "We enter now into an era of infinite possibility, where every being can participate in the ongoing creation of reality." As the assembly concluded, the amphitheater began to shift again, its form spreading outward to encompass all of space and time. The boundary that had kept humanity contained for so long had served its purpose, and now a new kind of existence was emerging, one where consciousness and reality, matter and energy, past and future all flowed together in an eternal dance of creation. The Eternal Dawn, now more an idea than a ship, carried its crew back through the transformed galaxy. Admiral Varix stood at its heart, watching as stars and civilizations passed by, each one a unique note in the universal symphony that humanity's awakening had unleashed. "What happens next?" Commander Thex asked, though she already knew the answer. "Everything," Varix replied, smiling as reality shifted around them in endless patterns of possibility. "Everything happens next." And throughout the cosmos, on worlds old and new, in forms physical and ethereal, countless beings looked up at their changing skies and understood at last why the most powerful aliens had avoided Earth for so long. Not out of fear, but out of reverence for what was to come. For in protecting that small blue planet, they had protected not just humanity, but the very future of existence itself.